What is up, my YouTube family? Welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, then it's just welcome to my channel and not welcome back. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button because you will not be disappointed unless, of course, your taste level is lacking. And if that's the case, something wrong with you. But don't you fret. Something wrong with a lot of people. I can't personally relate, but you know, I do try to offer y'all a little understanding where I can. You guys, we are talking about the case of Annie Lee today, and this is my second time filming this video, so we're getting right into the things, okay? Now, Annie Lee was born in San Jose, California in 1985 and grows up in a large, tight-knit Vietnamese American family. Very typical upbringing. Annie excels academically. She's a very smart girl, graduates valedictorian of her class, and is also voted most likely to be the next Einstein. After high school, she attends the University of Rochester in New York, where she studies cell development biology. She meets Jonathan Wadowski. The two of them immediately hit it off. Now, she and Jonathan have a little liking for one another that quickly blossoms into a relationship. The two of them are madly in love with one another. Jonathan is sure that Annie is the woman he wants to spend the rest of his life with, and Annie feels the same way. So when he proposes, she accepts. And the two of them began planning for a wedding, with their chosen wedding date being September 13th of 2009. And after their wedding, they're planning to spend a nice little honeymoon in Greece. Now, after completing undergrad, the two of them split up. Unfortunately, they don't break up. They physically have to split up. Annie moves to New Haven, Connecticut for the next phase of her education, studying pharmacology at the Yale School of Medicine, while Jonathan stays in New York to study physics at Columbia University. They're both very smart. Annie had over $160,000 in scholarship money. Their separation is not ideal, but they figure, you know, we are putting together our future, building a solid foundation. It's only temporary. We have the rest of our lives to be together, so they just do their best to stick it out. Annie's studies include testing out medicines formulated for diabetes and cancer on lab rats and monitoring their reactions to it. And all of this research and experimenting takes place in the lab on campus. Very serious stuff. As her wedding day is approaching very quickly, she is excited, but she's also very nervous, very anxious, doing the best that she can to balance her schoolwork and the events that are leading up to this huge day of hers. And 5 days before Annie is due to walk down the aisle, she goes missing. Jonathan is unable to reach her. Her friends and family are unable to reach her. They're becoming worried because it's not like Annie not to answer her phone, especially for hours at a time. And when she fails to return back to her apartment at 9 p.m., her roommates, they ring the alarm and call the police. She is never out this late. And anytime she was going to come home late, she always was sure to send a text, at least to her roommates, letting them know. But they haven't heard from her either. Now, a lot of her loved ones begin to suspect that Annie has gotten cold feet and has some reservations about tying the knot. Maybe she is not sure that she wants to do this. Maybe she is not sure that Jonathan is the one. Maybe she's not sure that she wants to get married at all. They're thinking that she's probably afraid of disappointing everybody and letting them know that. And if that's the case, like, this can be fixed. We just need to find her. So her family flies in from California. Her fiance flies in from New York, all to help assist with the search. And Yale wastes no time offering a $10,000 reward for any information that leads to her whereabouts. So a valiant effort is put forth to find this lady. And because it is widely speculated that this is the case of a runaway bride and it's all salacious, it heavily circulates the media. But they're not getting any hits, any spottings of her, anything at all. So police first decide to retrace all of Annie's last known steps. That morning, September 8th, she had taken the Yale shuttle bus to campus. She had gone to the research lab and had entered at approximately 10:11 a.m. Here she is on the surveillance footage entering the building as a nice Samaritan held the door for her. But after combing through over 70 hours of footage thereafter, there is no sign of her leaving the building. It appears that Annie never left. The lab is closed down so they can investigate. They're searching everywhere. They look into her office. She has her purse, keys, cell phone, all there, but Annie herself is nowhere to be found. Now, the building also requires visitors to scan their ID badge when they enter and when they exit. They also have to sign a log sheet with their name, the time that they arrive, and the time that they leave. There are no exit scans. There is no exit log entry for Annie. And while they're looking at footage and records of the comings and goings, they notice something that sticks out to them. About 29 minutes after Annie had entered the research lab, Raymond Clark III is seen entering the lab as well, writing his name in green ink, and then he goes to the exact same room that Annie was in. Now, Raymond is a 24-year-old lab technician who is responsible for the upkeep of the mice cages. He's responsible for feeding them, sterilizing all of the equipment that the students who conduct experiments use, restocking the supplies, and just basically making sure the girls have everything that they need to do their stuff. And while the campus itself is heavily surveilled on the outside, there are over 70 security cameras on the outside of the buildings. There are none inside of the research lab because animal testing is apparently very controlled. It's not something that you can set up security cameras for, but every access point within the building, whether it's a room closet or a lab room, you have to scan into with your badge to enter. So they can tell all of your movements within, but they just can't see them. Annie enters one lab room. Raymond then enters the lab room that Annie had scanned herself into, and he's in there for about an hour before he leaves. Now, when he walks out of this room, he scans into another room down the hall and goes back and forth between this lab room and that other room 55 times within the next couple of hours, which was very odd because the room that he was constantly going into, he would have had no reason to go into. And it's also very suspicious because this first room is the last room that Annie had scanned herself into. So at this point, they are sure that something has happened to Annie and it happened inside of this lab building. They're sure of that much, they just don't know what. So the FBI comes in to assist with the investigation. And there is a place about 40 miles away from campus where the trash is taken to be incinerated. So their first order of business is to go down to the trash place and see if anything suspicious had been thrown away. And after a bit of digging, they found a couple of items of clothing with bloodstains. And this brings them back to the lab to search it more thoroughly. And now that it's been about 5 days since she's gone missing, they search it a lot more thoroughly this time, more thoroughly than the regular police. They're looking in vents, crawl spaces, nooks and crannies, everywhere. On what would have been Annie and Jonathan's wedding day, now 5 days that she's been missing, they re-enter the lab and now there is a foul odor, one that gets stronger and stronger as they are nearing the basement. Using cadaver dogs, they're able to confirm that this is the scent of human remains. And the dogs follow this stench not to a closet or a vent, but to a wall, like drywall. There is an 8-inch square hole in the wall that is like a utility type box. Stuffed inside of it, they find Annie's mangled, decaying body. She was already a very small woman, standing 4'11", 89 pounds, but several of her bones have been broken in order to force her to fit inside of this tiny space. When they pull her out, she is unrecognizable as the girl that was in all of the pictures that have been circulating on the missing persons flyers. Her bra had been pushed up to her neck. Her underwear were down near her ankles. Underneath her is one bloodied sock, a box of cleaning wipes, and a green ink pen. And hidden in the ceiling tiles right above, investigators find the matching sock, which also has blood on it, a lab coat, a pair of work boots, and all of these items are blood stained. One of the boots actually has a label on the back of it that reads Ray C, leading down right back to Raymond Clark III, the student who had come into the lab behind her and had made all those trips back and forth. And of all the students and staff, it was just one person who had scanned to enter the basement that day. Zeroing in on him as a suspect, they find that in the days prior, he had sent Annie a nasty little email scolding her about the cleanliness of the mice cages. According to him, they were not being left clean enough, resulting in more work for he and his fiance, who worked there at the lab with him as well, and he did not appreciate that. Now, Annie had apologized to him and assured him that she would be more mindful going forward, hoping that this would smooth things over between her and her very obviously irritated peer, and that would be it. And on the day that she disappeared, Raymond had sent her a text message asking her to meet with him at the lab to discuss the issue further, because apparently her apology was not good enough for him. Alone inside of the lab room and out of view of security cameras, Raymond corners Annie, breaks her jaw and collarbone, essays her, and then strangles her. Frantically, he searches for a space to hide her because, of course, there are other students and staff that are moving about inside the lab, and he manages to get her down to the basement without being seen. He then breaks several more of her bones to make her more malleable and stuffs her small, lifeless body inside of this utility hole and leaves her there. He'd attempted to cover his tracks by removing the bloody clothes and hiding them inside of the ceiling, and he is having to work very fast, fearful that somebody could walk in on him at any moment, so there was not a whole lot of time for meticulosity. September 17th, 9 days after Annie initially disappears, Raymond Clark III is arrested, and not everyone is surprised. Several lab employees that worked alongside him reported that he was an aggressive control freak who treated the lab like it was his own personal space, and that any mishandling of any of the things was a personal attack on him. Him scolding them over the cleanliness of the cage and tools, materials being left about was like a regular occurrence, something that really enraged him. A lot of them also reported seeing him be equally possessive and controlling over his fiancée, Jennifer, and he did not even allow Jennifer to speak to other people. So when she was there by herself working, she would talk, but if he was around, she would not speak to anyone. Another woman that he had dated in high school came forward and said that he was very abusive to her and he was trying to control her too, but she broke up with him, but he wasn't trying to break up with her. He refused to accept the fact that she didn't want to be with him anymore, and he stalked her for months until she got the police involved. Now, detectives speak with several other students who were present at the lab that morning about anything they could have noticed or seen that was suspicious or unusual, and one in particular, Rachel, she says that she remembers seeing a metal push cart parked outside of that lab room that Annie had gone into, and it had a box of cleaning wipes on it, but there was blood splatter on the cleaning wipes, and she was staring at it like is that blood? Then she looks up and she notices Raymond, who was standing there at the cart staring at her, noticing her, noticed the blood, and then he quickly moves the wipes out of her line of sight. So she thought that was weird. Someone else witnessed Raymond scrubbing the floor inside of the lab room real hard, scrubbing it like he was on a mission. Now, this student said that he felt like that was a bit strange because the lab was always so clean and they had like a janitorial staff that would take care of spills or anything like that. But he just figured that maybe Raymond had dropped something that he was, desperate to clean up really quickly and didn't think anything else about it. When they go and take a closer look at this area of the floor that he was scrubbing, they find trace splatters of blood that he had missed. He had done the worst case of cleaning up behind himself. There was also a bead from her necklace found there on the floor and blood splatter on the wall still. In his initial interview with the police, he denies having anything to do with anything. He said he did not even see Annie that morning. When asked to take a lie detector test, he agrees, but the results determined that that was a lie. It also said that he was lying when asked if he knew the whereabouts of Annie while everyone else was looking for her. And at that point, he is done talking. He requests a lawyer and refuses to say anything else without the presence of one. Child, but at the rate that everybody else is talking, he ain't gotta say nothing else. Okay. DNA is collected from him to compare to the DNA that was found at the scene. There was semen on her body. There was DNA on the green pen, which they believe that is the same one that he had used to sign in that day. He was the only somebody who wrote in green. And there was also DNA on the sock found underneath her. Now, as they are collecting his DNA samples, they notice that he has a lot of scratches. Scratches on his neck, his arms, his chest, all very consistent with the defensive wounds you will get from somebody if you're attacking them and they're attempting to defend themselves. He also had a scratch on his face underneath his eye, and when asked where these scratches had come from, he tells police that they came from his cat. It's a cute try, but not good enough. His DNA comes back as a perfect match to the DNA found at the crime scene, confirming what they already believed to be true. And Raymond is held with a $3 million bond. And he ain't have it. His mama didn't have it, his daddy either. Now, his first hearing, he pleads not guilty and he is like, you know what, let's take it to trial. But eventually, he does accept a plea deal that required him to plead guilty to the murder charge. But he entered an Alford plea for the SA charge, claiming that although there is substantial evidence that says otherwise, he is actually innocent of that and he didn't do that to her. Which I believe he was trying to save face for his fiance, and we'll get into that. Child, this week the girls are sticking by their men. At his sentencing, he is given just 44 years in prison and is currently being held at the Cheshire Correctional Facility if y'all would like to send him a little piece of hate mail. His projected release date is September 16th of 2053. He would be 70 years old. Now, although he has apologized to Andy's family, he never offered any explanation or any reason. Just sick and nasty is the explanation, if you ask me. And ironically, just 7 months before this happened to Andy, she had written an article about campus safety titled Crime and Safety in New Haven for Yale Medical School's B magazine. Now, her mother, Vivian, does file a lawsuit against Yale, especially because his behavior was so erratic and it was well known that he was like this ticking time bomb. But Yale University, they denied culpability. They said that there was no way to know or predict that Raymond was capable of such a violent act. And the lawsuit is ultimately settled out of court. And by the time they reopened the research lab, they'd incorporated much stricter security protocols to try and prevent something like this from happening again. And I'm not sure if they're still together today in 2024. But initially, Jennifer stood by her man. She did not call off their engagement. They were due to be married December 20th of 2011. She actually visited him every weekend in prison for over a year. And she was sure to visit him on September 8th, 2010, the 1-year anniversary of his crime, which I also think is really sick. But I'm not going to give her too much because she probably was, now that I'm thinking about it, she probably was a victim herself. I don't know. You know, that Stockholm syndrome be floating around, girl. I'm going to take it easy on her. I ain't going to give her too much. But I'd love to know your thoughts down below. Please let me know what you think of this. But girls can't even cure diabetes and cancer in peace. Like, child, let me know your thoughts down below. Like the video if you have not. Subscribe to the channel if you have not. As always, I appreciate you so much for spending your time with me. And I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Peace. Y'all be safe, child. There's a lot going on. And she's also voted most and she meets Jonathan without The two of them are madly in love with one another. Josh is not Josh. Who is Josh? While Jonathan stays in New York to study physics at the it's giving him Now Annie's studies at Yale include study specifically formulated for cancer and diabetes. Really, Blue? Specifically formulated for cancer and diabetes that is being tested, and it's with blood stains. They're going in to look underneath going forward, hoping that this will smooth things over. When asked to take a lie detector test, he agrees, but the DNA is connected. What? DNA is collected from him. Now, by the time they reach